Hello, and welcome to the Wade Borth Podcast. I'm your host, Wade Borth, and in every episode, my goal is to get you to think differently about how money works and ultimately to empower you to take control of your money and your personal financing system. Hello, welcome back to the Wade Borth Podcast. Today, I have a thought I want to share with you, and it was through a discussion I was having with an individual. We were talking about starting businesses, and they asked me about what we do with the infinite banking idea. And I said, and I asked the question, and I got this from a colleague of mine, and she asked the question one time, and it just really stuck with me. She says, how many businesses would you start? How many businesses would you start if there was no fear of loss? Think about that for a second. What stops us from creating a business and moving forward with a business that excites us, that says, I would love to do that? But what it usually follows that is, but, anything that follows, anything previous to but is really discounted, right? So I would start all kinds of businesses, but I'm afraid I would lose my money. I'm afraid it wouldn't turn out the way I thought it would turn out. But let's think about that for just a real quick second. How many businesses would you start if the fear of loss was removed? I think there would be a tremendous amount of just a lot of people out there that go, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to do this business because I know I can make it. I know the fear is gone. So I want to put my time and effort towards this because I find that a lot more fulfilling. And so think about that for a second. We talk about in Nelson's book on the very intro of the page, on page 3, in Becoming Your Own Banker, he talks about the business of banking will go on forever. No matter what you do, when interest rates rise, interest rates fall, the business of banking, the process of banking is going to go on forever. So think about this for a second. What are we trying to get at? We want to grow our family financing system, which is just in a bigger context is the banking process. But we have lack of knowledge, which we can solve for just by listening to videos and educating ourselves, or listening to podcasts or watching videos or whatever it might be. But people are saying, oh, well, if I put money towards that, I might lose out. And this is why we use properly structured whole life. It takes that fear. It really should take the fear out of, I'm going to lose money in this process. Because if you look at it, a contract with a life insurance company, which I would argue is one of the strongest financial institutions in this country, if not the world, backing your play. They're saying, okay, you put money here. We're going to guarantee you that this is the least amount of money you're ever going to have. So now that fear of loss should be gone. We say, hey, this is the least amount that they're going to have. And especially if you're thinking longer term, if you think this is a business I'm going to be in, because you're going to be in it, if you know it or not, you're in it, you're going to be in this for the rest of your lives, then why not participate in it? Why not take control of it? Why not control the banking function in your lives? Apply the principles that we talked about, that Nelson talked about in his book. But where you store your money, we know what the absolute least is going to be. So there should be no fear, because we can look at a ledger. We can talk to the insurance company, says, well, if I put in 10,000 or 50 or 100,000, whatever the dollar amount is that you want to use. Once you look at that, then we know in year 3, year 5, year 10, they can guarantee you that this is the least amount you're ever going to have in that product. That eliminates so much fear. If you really think about it, then what is the reason why it's stopping us from taking control of the banking function in our lives? Lack of knowledge or lack of belief in ourselves. Again, the knowledge one I know we can address. We can educate people just through the use of videos and podcasts. So then it's just lack of knowledge or lack of belief in ourselves that we can actually do this. And I'm just here to tell you that you can do this. This is something that so many people are doing, so many different levels. And it does take some time, and it does take some education, and it takes some effort. But at the end of the day, we've eliminated the fear. Because you think about it, the reason why people, it's a bit irrational, but there's a lot of studies that show that people's fear of loss is about 10 times greater than their enjoyment of gain. So what I mean by that is if somebody's going to put a bet down and says, hey, you have a 50-50 chance of losing $10,000. Well, it typically takes about 10 times that for people to want to engage in that conversation because they have a fear of loss, if it's something real meaningful. So I guess my point would be, think about this from the standpoint of what's holding us back, taking control of the banking function in our lives. If it's the fear of the unknown, the fear of loss, knowing that this is the reason why we use the properly structured policies within mutual insurance companies, very strong mutual insurance companies. So we know the money is always going to be there. We know at the very least is going to be in years 2, 10, 15, 20, 50, 100, whatever it might be. Those dollars are always going to be there. And that's the real strength. And that should take the fear out of financing, the banking function in your life, because you know that money is going to be there. And this is the reason why Chase and Wells Fargo and all the big traditional banks out there use tremendous amount of properly structured whole life insurance, because there's a certainty there. They can put the money there. And then again, they're not overly concerned about, are they going to make 2%, 2.5%, 3%, 3.5%, 4%? That's the chicken feed. They're more concerned about the fact that when they do apply the banking principles, their returns are 100% return, 500% return, 1,000% return, whatever it might be on those dollars. They're spending pennies to make thousands, not even hundreds. They're spending pennies to make thousands. And again, all we're trying to do is get you to look and understand that maybe that can work for me as well. Maybe not to that extent, but the idea and the thought of how they look at money and how they use money. And again, if we could take the fear out of not knowing what the very downside is, because again, with a properly structured policy, we know what the downside is. And so therefore, all we have to do is engage with our minds, like, how do we use this money going forward? So I'll leave it there with you. I'll challenge you to say, what is it I could do if I could take control of the banking function in my life? If I could be the lender of hard money lender, if I'm financing my business, if I'm financing my family, or whatever it might be, what are the opportunities you have? Knowing that the downside from where you store your money, that's guaranteed, that fear should be gone. Then how big could that be? How infinite could this idea be about what you can finance if you control the banking function in your life? More importantly, maybe in somebody else's life. So reach out to us. Go to Sage Wealth Strategy. Again, if you like this idea, like this content, leave a comment to give it to other people, because other people should be hearing this as well. Go out to our website, read our content, sagewealthstrategy.com. You can reach me at wade@sagewealthstrategy.com. And let's find a way for us to take that fear out of you starting your own family financing business. If you're enjoying this podcast or know anyone else that might be interested, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and please leave a review. This will help this podcast reach and help more people by ranking higher in searches, and ultimately help more people get out of financial bondage. And don't be afraid to share this podcast with your friends and family, because we can be easily found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.